Jesus' first miracle, you guys might remember. Where did it happen? What did it happen at? Wine into water. Yep, wine into water. And he does that at a wedding. He turns that into water, and everyone turns from water. Everyone pays attention. I mean, they are focused on him because open bars at weddings are awesome.
I wouldn't know yet.
Yeah. When I perform a wedding, when I go and do all that stuff, I don't have cool tricks like that. I wish I had those kind of cool tricks. But I do have a sermon, and sermons are not as cool as open bars, and no one pays any attention to the sermon at a wedding. Married couples, does anyone remember anything that your pastor said? You do? Just the rest are like, no. I was focused, I was stressed, I was this. And unless the pastor makes a mistake, I've made some mistakes in my life. Sorry to Odette and Todd for their wedding. But unless the pastor makes a mistake, none of you remember anything that the preacher says at a wedding. And I get that because half the folks that have been there in church, they haven't been in a church since last Christmas, and the bride is always so beautiful and happy, and there's that open bar thing. But no one pays attention to the preacher at weddings. But funerals. At funerals, people come from all across the spiritual spectrum. All people, all backgrounds, looking to share in grief. They're looking to celebrate someone's life. And most people there want to hear something hopeful. However they classify that, hopefulness. People at funerals, they don't have to believe in God or heaven or anything about religion. Many of them haven't been to church since 5 Christmases ago. But everyone is looking for a comforting word. Everyone wants some hopeful sense that life matters, that even at death, a person is important for more than just what's there to celebrate and what's in the box and the pictures and the memories and all that. Life is more important than just the collection of all those parts. At a funeral, all kinds of people are looking for good news. It is a holy privilege in my career to try to share that message. And I'm going to try to share that to all people across the spiritual spectrum. And you can imagine exactly what it looked like at Lazarus' funeral. You've been to these funerals. You can imagine the anxious crowd filling with all different kinds of people. Each of them, this mix of emotions inside. Oh, Lazarus, he died too young. And what are his sisters going to do now? He took care of them. What are they going to do? Well, he was such a caring guy. I'm sure he planned for that. And someone would say, do you think he's going to go to heaven? He spent a lot of time with that weird Jesus guy. But if they were such good friends, where is Jesus now? And they just talk. And that's what the funerals are all just talking around, this mix of emotions and guilt and shame and happiness and joy and grief and all of it just jammed together. And in that crowd, somewhere in that first century fellowship hall, there's probably someone like the Samaritan woman we talked about a few weeks ago. There's probably someone who's spiritual, but certainly not going to go in for all the details about afterlife stuff. She doesn't take that seriously. And they go to the service, and she sits there, and that Psalm 23 thing, that sounds really familiar. Maybe her grandma said that at some point, but she doesn't know any of the hymns that they're singing at Lazarus' funeral. And she doesn't really feel all that comfortable praying with everyone else. But that woman hurts. And she misses Lazarus. And she cries for him. And she writes a card to Martha, her friend. And she gives her a call every once in a while just to see how she's doing. And you can imagine somewhere in that crowd there's a Nicodemus. We talked about Nicodemus a couple weeks ago. We talked about how he was, at some point in his life, he was so adamant about certain types of religion. That this person over there might deserve one kind of ultimate salvation. And this person over there, their life is just doomed in another way. And in most of his life, you know people like Nick, they could be so rigid, so offensive. He's going to send those emails about politics and religion, and you just have to delete them right away. And he didn't know Lazarus all that well. Maybe they just worked on something down at town hall. They probably butted heads once in a while, but they had that mutual respect that you get when you work on things together. And now he comes to the funeral to pay his respects and to help console people who never saw that side of Lazarus. And after the wake, standing around, the wine's flowing. There's those little odd circles where family and friends just all mingle together. Most of them are laughing and telling stories. And just days earlier, if you had asked Nicodemus, he would have said, Lazarus, probably doomed, doesn't go to the right church, doesn't believe the right things. But now he's listening to stories and honoring his life. And you can imagine what the church was like at that funeral. Maybe Lazarus, when he was alive, didn't take part in book clubs, didn't sing in choir, didn't serve on session, maybe didn't even really come to church that often. But at his funeral, I guarantee you there were a group of church ladies making finger foods, casseroles, and they would be there for the family any way they could. If you need anything, just call. I'm sorry for your loss. He was a wonderful man. And some people in the church would stumble through those awkward phrases that we always hear, he's in a better place now. And really, that's just their way to try to be hopeful, because that's what churches do. They try to be hopeful. And eventually, late in the midst of all those people having all those conversations, in steps Jesus. And he cries, and he consoles. And he lets Mary and Martha be angry at him, but mostly he gives hope in the way that only Jesus can. And everyone paid attention. I don't know what to think about the whole Lazarus coming back to life thing. I bet they didn't know what to think about that either. But you can ask, is it literal? Is it figurative? Did he really, flesh and bones, just walk out of the cave again? Or is it supposed to teach us something? That question doesn't really matter to me. What matters to me is that this is one more instance that wherever Jesus met people in routine lives, but especially in crisis, whether they were deeply faithful or whether they were thoroughly uncommitted in their life, whenever Jesus met people, he could zero in on the one thing that held them back from an abundant life. Whenever he met people, he was a presence of compassion and of hope. And whoever they were, whatever issues they seemed to have, Jesus offered a new life. And sometimes it was through teaching. Sometimes it was through stories. Sometimes it was through healing. Sometimes he would just do these crazy things that last through the stories for us, that changed people's lives and pointed people to new life and point us to new lives. And in this story, but in all the stories throughout the gospel, you can try this at home. Flip any page in the Gospels. 99 out of 100 times, somewhere on that page, Jesus is running into someone who is filled with anxiety and filled with fear, and they aren't content with something about their life. And maybe they're greedy or they're angry or they're just contrarian in the world, and they're just walking around filling their time with a job, filling their life with entertainment, having acquaintances more than friendships. They are alive, but they're certainly not living. You can't call that a full life. And if it's not truly life, what can you call it but death? They're just walking around kind of dead. And in story after story, Jesus meets these people. And whoever he's talking to, wherever they are in that spiritual spectrum, however dead they might be, Jesus offers them peace and contentment and growth. And we see people discovering meaning in their lives, and they find reasons to be generous, and they enjoy their neighbors more, and they find reasons to embrace the time they have. And wherever Jesus goes, people hold on to hope stronger. And what can you call that but new life? And there are 40 people here who have different ideas about what that means, and 40 people here who have different ideas of what it would be like for Jesus to wander into a room like this. And 40 people here who have some different experiences of their faith and of how God's been in their life, and 40 people here who have different issues that bind them up, and 40 people here who have different ideas about what it would be like to come out of that captivity and find light and deeper joyful living. Some of us in that 40 or so, maybe there's 50 here, I don't know, Wes is counting down here. Some of us in that group, we would say we are happy and we are content, and you're at a great point in your life. You have these fantastic relationships. You count your life as blessed. And that might be a season, or maybe you've cultivated your whole existence to see that life as blessed. But if you met Jesus, if that's your story, maybe in some disaster, maybe in just your routine life, don't you think you could still grow in some kind of way? Some stretching toward sanctification or holiness, or some way to be a better person. Others of us on the other side of the coin, blessed. Man, life could go a little worse, but life is hard. And you long for something. Some of you long for spiritual answers and to push away some guilt or shame or to find some healing. And others of you just want more time or less debt. You want a way to raise your kids better. You want some encouragement with your career. You want a way out of depression. You want some support for your marriage, for your relationship. You want some guidance for the future. And you can kind of picture what life would be like if Jesus came and just kind of filled in that blank for you. If Jesus wants to give hope, he could start right here in my life, because it's a little bit broken. And many of us, between blessed and broken, many of us, our story is somewhere in between there. You're managing to get everything done. Everything you're supposed to do, you get it done. You're a good parent. At least your kids still talk to you. That's good enough for now. You find some way to be active in the community. Your job is kind of stable, even if the paycheck doesn't always get where you want it to. Maybe you're able to serve on one of the ministry teams at church, and you'll find a day off here and there. Maybe you have a longing for something about the future, but mostly you are focused on just achieving everything you can from day in and day out. And somehow, some way, you get it all done, but you wonder, why don't you feel more fulfilled in that grind? Why is it that the only way to keep yourself moving so that everything's just kind of barely in balance is to step away from all those things that give you pleasure and to just hold on and manage to get through those things that are a struggle? And you feel trapped, like you've been buried by responsibilities and by dissatisfaction. And maybe you think, well, the Old Testament talks about having a Sabbath, a day off. Does the Old Testament have any clue what my life is like? I mean, they were shepherds. This is not the same kind of life. And Jesus can just walk in the woods and go pray with God. I don't have time to hike. If I did have time to hike, I can't even imagine what life would be like without this level of stress and anxiety. And Jesus steps into all of that. And the good news is that wherever he goes, people find new life in whatever ways are appropriate to their situation. And wherever we are on our own spiritual journey, the consistent message that I see, and this is just the way I read Scripture, the message that I see page after page after page, is that God enters lives to push away those things that hold us back from abundance. And sometimes that just means the universe weeps with us. And sometimes that means we have space to scream and yell and blame God for being distant, for being late, and God draws closer, even in our lament. And sometimes, even through church or through the beauty of the regular life out there, we are reminded of the grace and the joy in our life. And sometimes we recognize through people or through situations the consolation and the guidance, or we're able to push away the guilt or the pain. And maybe at some point we can untie those problems. And maybe at some point we're able to roll away our burdens. And maybe we can just dance ourselves right out into that crack of light that we most need. Friends, it is not true. It is not true that you are held captive by your situations. The good news is that through God's grace, we can push away the world's expectations and the world's standards and roll away the things that bury us so that we might flourish in the way that God intended for us. From death to life, from life to new life. Come out, be unbound, and embrace the life that God intends.